Success did not arrive in my life like a gift. It came like a punishment I chose willingly, slow, heavy, and unforgiving. While others my age were enjoying their youth, I was learning how expensive survival could be. I didn't inherit comfort. I built stability brick by brick, hour by hour, at the cost of everything people my age usually take for granted. My days began before sunrise and ended long after midnight. 80-hour workweeks were not a phase, they were my reality for years. I worked until my hands ached and my mind felt numb, then worked some more because stopping meant falling behind. Coffee replaced sleep, silence replaced laughter. My phone stayed empty not because no one cared, but because I had no time to answer. I watched life happen from a distance. Friends went to parties, weddings, vacations. I sent short congratulations, quick excuses, and empty promises to meet someday. That someday never came. I missed birthdays, I missed family gatherings. I missed my own youth without realizing it at the time. I told myself it would all be worth it in the end. I had to believe that, or the sacrifices would have crushed me. Money didn't come easily either. Every paycheck was already spent before it arrived on debts, investments, courses, tools, and opportunities that scared me but promised growth. I failed more times than I succeeded. There were nights I sat alone in a dark room, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was chasing a fantasy. But quitting wasn't an option. I didn't have a safety net. If I fell, there was no one to catch me. My parents watched from a distance. They never stopped me, but they never truly supported me either. They preferred comfort and familiarity. My sister, on the other hand, lived a very different life. While I was grinding through exhaustion, she was grinding through parties. Her days were filled with brunches, shopping trips, and late nights funded quietly by our parents' pension. She never worried about money. She never worried about consequences. I didn't resent her at first. I told myself everyone chooses their own path. Mine was harder, but it was mine. I swallowed the frustration when I saw her post pictures from clubs while I sat in an office under flickering lights. I stayed quiet when my parents praised her social life and told me I should relax more, enjoy life, stop being so serious. They didn't understand that seriousness was the only thing keeping me afloat. Years passed like this, blurred together by fatigue and persistence. Slowly, things began to change. One promotion turned into another. One risky decision paid off. The numbers in my bank account grew, not suddenly but steadily. For the first time, I could breathe without panic. I wasn't rich, but I was no longer afraid. The penthouse came much later. It wasn't an impulse buy or a symbol of ego. It was a milestone, a quiet reward to myself. Every square foot represented years of sacrifice. Every window reflected nights of loneliness, stress, and relentless discipline. When I finally signed the papers, I didn't celebrate. I sat alone in the empty living room and let the silence speak for everything I had lost to earn it. That home was not just property, it was proof. Proof that the struggle meant something, proof that I didn't waste my life chasing an illusion. It was the physical result of missed youth, missed memories, and broken exhaustion. I furnished it slowly, carefully, with intention. Nothing in it was free, everything had a story. My family's attitude changed the moment success became visible. Suddenly they were proud. Suddenly I was the successful one. My parents spoke about my penthouse to relatives as if it were a family achievement. My sister joked about visiting my place as if it had always been hers too. I noticed the shift, but I ignored the warning signs. I wanted to believe their pride was genuine. I was wrong. Because while I built my life through sacrifice and discipline, they were quietly learning something else, that my success could be used. And I had no idea how expensive that lesson was about to become. The invitation came on a quiet evening, wrapped in warmth and familiar words. My mother called, her voice softer than usual, almost careful. She said the family wanted to have a small, celebratory dinner. Nothing fancy, just us. She said they were proud of me, proud of how far I had come, proud of my success. I hesitated. Something about the timing felt strange. My family was never big on celebrations, especially not for me. Achievements were usually met with polite nods, practical questions, or comparisons. Still, I convinced myself that maybe this time was different. Maybe they had finally seen the years I had buried into work. Maybe this dinner was a genuine attempt to reconnect. I agreed. The restaurant they chose was expensive, formal, the kind of place that whispered status more than comfort. As I walked in, I felt slightly out of place, not because I couldn't afford it, but because I had learned to associate luxury with silence, not performance. My parents were already seated when I arrived. My father stood briefly, nodded, and sat back down. My mother smiled too quickly. The atmosphere was tight, not hostile, not warm either. It felt like a room holding its breath. We exchanged small talk. My mother asked about work. My father commented on the market, pretending to understand details he had once dismissed as risky nonsense. I answered politely, carefully. I had learned long ago that saying too much only invited judgment. The waiter poured water, menus were opened, closed, opened again, then my sister arrived. She swept in like she owned the place, confident, loud, perfectly styled. Her smile froze for half a second when she saw me, then returned brighter than before. She kissed our mother's cheek, hugged our father, and glanced at me with something between amusement and calculation. There he is, she said, sitting down. The star of the family. The word star didn't sound like praise, it sounded like a label. As dinner began, I noticed how often my parents looked at her before responding to anything I said. How she controlled the rhythm of the conversation, steering it effortlessly. When I mentioned a recent project, she nodded absent-mindedly. When she spoke about her social plans, my parents leaned in, fully engaged. I told myself not to read into it. Wine glasses clinked, plates arrived. Compliments were exchanged, but none of them landed naturally. My mother praised my discipline, a word she always used when she meant lack of fun. My father said success was good, but family always comes first, though no one had mentioned otherwise. The tension thickened with every sentence. Halfway through the meal, my sister leaned back in her chair, smiling casually. You know, she said, swirling her wine, it's funny how life turns out. Everyone looked at her. She continued, some people struggle so much and others just know how to enjoy life. She looked directly at me when she said it. But in the end, it's all family success, right? My father nodded slowly. My mother smiled again, that same careful smile. I felt it then, that subtle shift. The dinner wasn't about celebration, it was about positioning. They weren't here to congratulate me, they were here to measure what I had and how it could be used. My sister asked about my penthouse, casually, too casually. She asked how big it was, how the view looked at night, whether it felt lonely living there alone. My mother chimed in, saying it must be too much space for one person. My father added that property was meant to serve family, not ego. Each sentence felt rehearsed. I answered calmly, choosing neutral words. I said I liked the quiet. I said the space helped me think. I said it represented years of work. My sister laughed softly. You've always been dramatic, she said. That's when I knew this wasn't a dinner, it was a setup. They weren't proud of my success, they were uncomfortable with it, and worse, they felt entitled to it. The smiles, the compliments, the sudden warmth, it was all bait. They were circling something, waiting for the right moment to strike. As dessert arrived, my father cleared his throat, my mother folded her hands. My sister sat up straighter, her smile sharpening, whatever this dinner was truly about. It was finally about to be said, and I had no idea how quickly pride would turn into demand. The moment came so smoothly that for a second I almost missed it. My sister set her fork down gently, as if what she was about to say required calm, not courage. She smiled at our parents first, seeking silent approval, then turned to me. So, she said lightly, I have some news. My mother's eyes brightened instantly. My father leaned back, crossing his arms. I felt my shoulders tighten. Nothing in my family was ever announced without purpose. I'm getting married, my sister continued, pausing just long enough for effect. Or, well, starting something new, we're still deciding what sounds better. My mother gasped softly, pressing a hand to her chest. My father nodded, already looking satisfied. I forced a polite smile. Congratulations felt expected, even if the announcement sounded vague, more strategic than emotional. That's big news, I said carefully. It is, my sister agreed, smiling wider. Very big. And you know how people are, appearances matter. There it was, the word appearances. She went on, explaining how her future husband or business partners, the story shifted slightly, moved in high circles. How image was everything, how a certain lifestyle was expected. She spoke fluently, confidently, as if reading from a script she had practiced many times. Then she leaned forward. That's why I need your penthouse. The words landed flat, unreal. For a heartbeat, I thought I had misheard her. I waited for laughter, a joke, a clarification, none came. My parents remained silent, their faces neutral, almost expectant. I'm sorry, I said slowly. You need what? My sister sighed, as if I were being difficult on purpose. Your penthouse, it's perfect. The location, the view, the prestige. It sends the right message. You understand, right? I looked at my parents. My mother avoided my eyes. My father nodded once firmly. It's only fair, my mother said softly. You're already established. She's just starting her life. My father leaned forward. You can always buy another one, you have the means. That sentence hit harder than any insult. You can always buy another one. As if the years I spent breaking myself down to afford that home were nothing. As if property was disposable. As if my sacrifices were interchangeable. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. That penthouse isn't extra, it's mine, I worked for it. My sister rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic, no one's saying you didn't work, but family helps family. By taking, I asked. Her smile tightened. By sharing, my father's expression darkened. Watch your tone. I took a breath. I'm not refusing to help, but giving away my home isn't help, it's erasing what I built. Silence fell over the table, not shocked silence, calculating silence. My mother spoke again, her voice gentle but firm. You've always been so focused on yourself. Maybe this is a chance to think beyond your own comfort. That hurt more than I expected. My sister leaned back, arms crossed. Honestly, you don't even need that place, you live alone. It's wasted on you. Wasted, the word echoed in my head, every missed birthday, every sleepless night, every risk I took when no one believed in me, all of it wasted. I shook my head slowly. No, I won't do this. The air changed instantly, my father's jaw clenched. His face flushed red. So that's it, he snapped. After everything we've done for you, I met his gaze. You didn't buy that penthouse, I did. His chair scraped loudly against the floor as he stood. You've become greedy, he shouted, arrogant. You think money makes you better than us? My sister smirked, watching the explosion she had triggered. My mother pressed her lips together, disappointed but not surprised. I stayed seated, calm on the surface, shaking inside. I think my work matters, I said. And I won't give it away to maintain someone else's image. That was the moment I crossed an invisible line. The celebration was officially over, the mask had fallen, and respect, whatever little existed, was gone. My father stepped closer, his voice rising, words turning sharp and cruel. And I realized too late, the demand was never a request, it was an expectation. My father's voice didn't just rise, it cracked through the room like a whip. Conversations at nearby tables softened, then stopped. I could feel eyes turning toward us, curious, cautious. Public embarrassment had never stopped him before. So this is who you've become, he shouted. A person who measures everything in money? I stood up slowly, not in anger but in self-defense. Sitting suddenly felt like surrender. This isn't about money, I said, it's about respect. He laughed bitterly. Respect? You talk about respect after everything we sacrificed for you? My hands clenched at my sides. What sacrifices? I asked. You didn't pay my tuition, you didn't help with my first business, you didn't stay up with me when I failed. My mother gasped softly. How can you say that? Because it's true, I replied, turning to her. You gave me food and shelter, I'm grateful, but everything beyond that I built myself. My sister scoffed. Listen to him, acting like a victim. I looked at her. You've never had to worry about rent or debt or failure, you wouldn't understand. My father slammed his hand on the table, glasses rattled. Enough, he roared. You think struggle makes you special? No, I said firmly. I think it gives me the right to say no. That word ignited him. No, he repeated, stepping closer. In this family, we don't say no. His face was inches from mine now. I could smell the wine on his breath. His eyes burned with rage and wounded pride. You forget where you came from. I remember exactly where I came from, I said quietly. That's why I won't go back. My mother stood up, voice shaking. You're tearing this family apart. I shook my head. No, this was already broken. I just stopped pretending. My sister crossed her arms, smiling coldly. You always thought you were better than us. This just proves it. I laughed once, short, humorless. If wanting to keep what I earn makes me selfish, then yes, I'm selfish. My father's face turned a deeper shade of red. Ungrateful, he spat. Unfilial. A child who forgets their roots is worse than an enemy. The words hit hard, but I refused to flinch. I had endured worse from life itself. I didn't forget my roots, I said. I outgrew the poison around them. That was the final blow. You dare speak to me like that? My father screamed. I raised you, you raised me, I answered, but you didn't own me. The restaurant manager hovered nearby, now nervous. My mother looked around, ashamed. My sister's smile widened. This chaos suited her perfectly. My father raised a trembling finger toward my face. You owe us everything. I stepped back, creating space. I owe you nothing that costs me my dignity. For a moment, I thought he might stop, that reason might surface. Instead, his pride took full control. I should have taught you better, he snarled. I should have broken this arrogance out of you when I had the chance. Something inside me hardened. You don't get to threaten me because I won't fund your fantasy, I said. The room felt smaller, tighter. Like it was holding its breath. My father took one final step forward, his hand lifting, not in warning, not in discipline, but in rage. And in that moment, I understood something terrifying and clear. This argument was never about family. It was about control. And he was about to prove it. The words came first, sharp, brutal, meant to wound. My father's voice shook with fury, but there was something else underneath it too. Fear of losing control, fear of being powerless in front of his own child. I should have never raised a child as heartless as you, he shouted. You are a disgrace to this family. The sentence echoed in my head, louder than the noise of the restaurant. I had imagined many ways this confrontation might end. Violence was not one of them. Not from him, not in public, not over something I earned with my own hands. I opened my mouth to respond, but he didn't give me the chance. You think money makes you a man? He continued, his voice breaking into a scream. All it's done is turn you into a selfish, cold-blooded stranger. You've forgotten your roots, your blood, your duty. People were openly staring now. Some whispered, others looked away, embarrassed for us. I felt every pair of eyes like needles in my skin, but I refused to look down. I refused to shrink. I didn't forget my duty, I said calmly. I just won't be bullied into giving up my life. That was when he snapped, his hand moved faster than my mind could process. One moment it was clenched at his side, the next it was slicing through the air toward my face. I heard the sound before I felt it, a sharp, hollow crack that silenced the room instantly. Then came the pain. It burned across my cheek, hot and shocking, like my skin had been set on fire. My head snapped to the side. For a split second, the world tilted, lights blurring into streaks of white and gold. The restaurant fell completely silent. No music, no chatter, no movement. Just that moment, frozen in disbelief. My cheek throbbed, but the pain wasn't what stunned me. It was the realization, the final, undeniable truth. This wasn't anger. This was entitlement enforced with violence. I slowly turned my head back to face him. My father stood there breathing heavily, his hands still raised, as if even he hadn't fully accepted what he had done. His eyes were wide, not with regret, but with shock that I hadn't collapsed, that I hadn't cried, that I hadn't begged. My mother covered her mouth, eyes wide, frozen between horror and obedience. She didn't step forward, she didn't say my name. My sister smiled, not openly, not dramatically, just a small, satisfied smirk at the corner of her mouth, as if something had gone exactly according to plan. That smile hurt more than the slap. I tasted blood where my teeth had cut into my cheek. I swallowed, steadying my breath. Every instinct screamed at me to react, to shout, to strike back, to explode. I did none of those things, instead I stood still. I looked my father straight in the eyes, not with fear, not with anger, but with clarity, the kind that comes when an illusion finally dies. That, I said quietly, is the last thing you will ever take from me. My voice didn't shake. And that seemed to disturb him more than any scream could have. The manager rushed over, asking if everything was all right. My father waved him away angrily. Family matter, he barked, family. The word felt empty now, hollow, poisoned. I touched my cheek lightly. It hurt, yes, but it also grounded me. It marked the moment everything changed. The moment I stopped being their child and became their mirror. No apology came, no explanation, only silence and shame hanging thick in the air. I realized then that this slap wasn't meant to correct me. It was meant to put me back in my place, to remind me that no matter how far I had come, they still believed they owned me. They were wrong, very wrong. And as I stood there, feeling the heat fade from my skin and something colder take its place inside my chest, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of the reckoning. After the slap, no one spoke. The silence that followed wasn't awkward or uncertain. It was heavy, deliberate, and suffocating. It pressed down on my chest, making every breath feel louder than it should have been. The entire restaurant seemed frozen in that moment, as if the world itself was waiting to see what I would do next. My father lowered his hand slowly. His face hardened, not with regret but with expectation. He was waiting for my reaction, a shout, a breakdown, an apology. Something that would restore the order he believed in. None came. My mother stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the table as if the wood grain suddenly required her full attention. She didn't reach for me, she didn't ask if I was okay. Her silence felt like a choice, and I understood what it meant. Peace for her had always been more important than justice. My sister leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs, her expression unreadable but smug. She avoided my eyes, not out of guilt, but out of satisfaction. This was exactly how she wanted it to unfold. Chaos created by others, benefit collected by her. I felt the sting on my cheek fade into a dull ache. The physical pain was already becoming irrelevant. Something else was happening inside me, something colder, clearer. The shock was gone. The hurt was fading, in its place was understanding. I was never their son or brother in that moment. I was an asset, a resource that had refused to cooperate. I straightened my jacket slowly, deliberately. Every movement felt measured, controlled. Not because I was afraid, but because I was done giving them emotional reactions they could use against me. My father finally broke the silence. Well, he demanded, "Are you done with your tantrum?" I looked at him calmly. "That wasn't a tantrum," I said. "That was the end." He frowned, confused. He didn't understand what I meant, and I didn't owe him an explanation. Around us, people were pretending not to stare. Forks moved, glasses lifted. The world was restarting, but something fundamental had stopped inside me. My mother finally looked up. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "You didn't have to push him like that." I almost laughed. Push him? As if refusing to give away my home justified being struck. As if violence was a reasonable response to boundaries. I nodded once. "You're right," I said quietly. "I won't push anymore." My sister smirked. "Good," she said. "Maybe now you'll learn." That was the moment I truly saw her, not as family, not as blood, but as someone who felt no shame standing in the ruins she helped create. I met her gaze. "I already have." She tilted her head, amused. "And what's that? That I don't belong here?" Her smile faltered just slightly. I turned back to my father. "You wanted control," I said. "You lost it the moment you raised your hand." He scoffed. "You think you're walking away from this?" I answered honestly. "I already have." I reached into my pocket and placed some cash on the table, more than enough to cover my meal. I didn't look at anyone as I did it. That chapter was already closed in my mind. My mother whispered my name. I paused, but I didn't turn around. I hope it was worth it, I said, not as a threat, not as a curse, just a statement of fact. Then I picked up my keys. The weight of them in my hand felt different now, not heavy with responsibility, but light with freedom. For the first time in years, I felt no obligation pulling me backward. As I walked toward the exit, I could feel my sister's eyes on my back. I could feel my father's anger burning holes into the space I left behind, but I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. The child they could intimidate was gone. What remained was someone they no longer had access to, and in that cold, quiet realization, I understood something powerful. Silence, when chosen, is not weakness. It is the sound of control changing hands. I didn't rush out of the restaurant. I didn't slam the door or turn back for dramatic last words. I walked out the way I had walked through life for years, quietly, deliberately, without asking for permission. Behind me, voices rose again. My father was shouting something about respect. My sister laughed sharply, adding fuel to the fire. My mother called my name once more, softer this time, as if softness could undo what silence had already sealed. I didn't respond. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside. It stung my cheek where the slap had landed, but it also woke me up. The city lights shimmered around me, indifferent and steady. Cars passed. People laughed on the sidewalk. Life continued, completely untouched by the collapse of my family behind me. I stood there for a moment, breathing, not shaking, not crying, just breathing. I took out my phone. There were no missed calls yet, no apologies, no messages asking if I was okay. I didn't expect any. People who feel entitled to you never ask how you feel, they only ask what you'll give. I unlocked my car and sat inside, hands resting on the steering wheel. The leather was cool under my palms, familiar, grounding. I stared straight ahead, letting the silence wrap around me. Then I spoke quietly to myself. Enough. It wasn't anger driving me anymore, it was resolution. As I drove home, memories tried to surface, childhood moments, old obligations, the invisible contract that said family comes first no matter the cost. I let those thoughts pass through me without resistance. They no longer had power. That contract had been broken the moment violence replaced conversation. When I reached my penthouse, the building lobby greeted me with soft lights and quiet professionalism. The doorman nodded respectfully. No judgment, no expectations, just courtesy. I rode the elevator up alone. When the doors opened, I stepped into my home, my real home. The space was calm, clean, untouched. Floor to ceiling windows revealed the city spread out below, glowing like a promise I had kept to myself. I set my keys down slowly. Then I said the words out loud, not for drama, but for truth. Since I'm such a disgrace, you won't be needing my disgraceful money anymore. There was no audience, no applause, just certainty. I sat on the couch and opened my laptop, not out of rage. Out of necessity, boundaries don't mean anything unless they are enforced. One by one, I began making changes. First, I opened my banking app and reviewed the supplementary credit cards linked to my account, cards my parents had used for years without hesitation. I didn't hesitate either, one tap, then another. Cancelled, cancelled, cancelled. The confirmation messages appeared calmly on the screen. No drama, no warnings, just facts. Next, I logged into the insurance portal. Their car insurance under my name, paid by my account. I scheduled the cancellation effective immediately. A simple checkbox, a simple confirmation. Then came my sister's allowance. Monthly transfers that had once felt like help but now looked like submission. I stopped them all, no explanations attached, no notes, just silence. I didn't feel cruel, I felt aligned. Each action wasn't revenge, it was correction. I wasn't punishing them, I was removing access. When I finished, I closed the laptop and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. My cheek still ached faintly, but even that pain was fading now. In its place was something unfamiliar and powerful, peace. My phone buzzed for the first time, a missed call, then another. I didn't answer. For years, I had been available on demand, financially, emotionally, silently. That availability had been mistaken for weakness. Tonight, I corrected that misunderstanding. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city I had earned inch by inch. Somewhere down there, my family was still shouting, still blaming, still convinced this was a phase. They were wrong. This wasn't an exit fueled by emotion. It was a permanent departure from a system that thrived on my obedience. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't walking away from something. I was walking toward myself. That night, I didn't sleep, not because I was restless or angry, but because clarity has a way of keeping the mind awake. When illusions shatter, they leave behind sharp edges of truth, and truth demands action. I sat at my desk as the city outside slowly dimmed, watching midnight pass without ceremony. This wasn't a breakdown, it was an audit. For years, I had blurred the line between generosity and obligation. I told myself I was helping my family, being responsible, doing the right thing. But the truth was simpler and uglier. I had been funding a lifestyle that didn't respect me. That ended tonight. I opened a spreadsheet I hadn't looked at in a long time. Every expense was there, organized, itemized, undeniable: monthly transfers to my sister, utility bills I covered for my parents, maintenance costs, subscriptions, emergency funds that somehow became permanent. I stared at the numbers, not with anger but with disbelief. This wasn't support, this was dependency. I began disconnecting everything that tied my life to theirs. First, I called the bank's 24-hour service line and confirmed the cancellation of all linked accounts. The representative asked if I was sure. I said yes without hesitation. There was no shaking in my voice, no guilt, just certainty. Next, I sent formal notices: clean, professional, emotionless. Insurance providers, service companies, account managers. Each message was short and final. Effective immediately. Those two words carried more weight than any argument ever could. Around 2 a.m., my phone started vibrating repeatedly, missed calls stacked on the screen. Messages followed: why isn't my card working? Did something happen? Call us immediately. I didn't respond, not because I was cruel, but because explanations invite negotiations, and negotiations were exactly how they had kept control for so long. By morning, the tone of the messages changed. Confusion turned into frustration. Frustration turned into panic. My sister texted first: "This isn't funny. Fix this now." No greeting, no question, just a command. I locked the phone and made coffee. My mother followed: "Your father is very upset. You've gone too far." Still no concern for me, no apology, just consequences for them. By mid-morning, the calls became aggressive. My father left a voicemail filled with insults, accusations, and threats. He accused me of betrayal, of destroying the family, of being ungrateful. I listened once, then I deleted it, because the message was clear: they still believed I owed them obedience. They were about to learn otherwise. Around noon, I received a call from my building's security office. They asked if I had authorized anyone to move belongings into my penthouse. My heart sank, not from fear but from confirmation. They had already assumed ownership. I asked security to send me the footage. There it was: my sister, my mother, suitcases, boxes, keys they should never have had. That was the moment sympathy died completely. I didn't call them, I called a lawyer, then I called a locksmith. Then I called the police, not to create drama but to document reality. Within hours, the locks were changed, access codes reset, a formal notice of unauthorized entry was filed. My sister's belongings were carefully removed and placed outside the building exactly as procedure required. No shouting, no confrontation, no emotion. Just systems doing what systems are meant to do: protect ownership. My phone exploded after that. Dozens of messages, missed calls, voice notes full of rage and disbelief. How could you do this? We are family. You can't treat us like strangers. But that was the irony. They had treated me like an object long before I returned the favor. That evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, I finally allowed myself to sit back and breathe. Everything was done, every tie cut cleanly, every line drawn clearly. This wasn't revenge, it was closure. I had removed myself from a system that required my suffering to function, and for the first time, I wasn't bracing for the next demand. I was free. The morning after the locksmith changed the locks, I received a call from the building manager. "I'm sorry, but your sister's things are still here," he said, voice low. "She's been coming and going. She says she has permission." My stomach tightened, not with fear, but with a familiar frustration. It was the same feeling I had when people assumed my hard-earned success was available for anyone to use. When my family saw my penthouse, they didn't see my effort. They saw a resource. I asked him to send the footage again. He confirmed it. My sister had been entering my home using a spare key she had hidden, something I didn't even know existed. A spare key? That was the final proof. They had never respected my boundaries. They had been waiting for an opportunity to take what they believed was theirs. I didn't hesitate. I didn't call my sister. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call my father. I didn't give them the satisfaction of hearing my voice or begging me to understand. I called the police. I explained the situation calmly and clearly. I told them about the unauthorized access. I told them about the locks being changed. I told them about the boxes being moved into my property without my permission. The officer on the line listened, then asked me if I wanted to file a formal report. "Yes," I said. The word felt heavy and final. When the police arrived, my sister was already there. She was standing in the lobby, arms crossed, her face a mask of indignation. She saw the officers and immediately turned pale, as if she had not expected the consequences to arrive so quickly. The officers approached her with a professional calm. They asked for her name. They asked if she had permission to be in the penthouse. She lied. "No," she said. "I was just dropping off a few things. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to." The officers exchanged glances. They asked for proof. My sister hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward the boxes, her face tightened, then she confessed reluctantly. "I was told it was okay," she said. "My parents said it was fine." That was the moment I realized how deep the manipulation ran. They weren't just trying to take my property, they were trying to rewrite reality to make it seem normal. The police asked for my ID and proof of ownership. I provided everything. Then the officer looked at my sister and said, "These items need to be removed. This is private property." My sister's eyes filled with anger and panic. She began to shout, accusing me of being cruel and heartless. She claimed I was destroying her future. She called me a villain. I watched her from a distance, calm and composed. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I simply watched the truth show itself in her face. The officers began moving her belongings out. Boxes were stacked. Suitcases were rolled. Furniture that didn't belong to her was left untouched because it was mine. My sister tried to stop them, pleading with the police, begging, even crying. But she had crossed a line. She had broken the law, not just the trust, and the law didn't care about family stories or emotional manipulation. As the last box was carried out, my sister turned to me, her voice shook. "You're doing this to me?" she said. "You're really doing this?" I felt nothing but cold clarity. "Yes," I said, her face twisted. "How can you be so heartless?" I looked at her calmly and said the truth. "I'm not heartless," I replied. "I'm just finally free of your expectations." She stared at me as if she couldn't understand how I could survive without her, as if I needed her approval, but I didn't. The police finished their work and left. My sister stood in the lobby, surrounded by her own boxes, her world collapsing in silence. I walked up to my penthouse door and unlocked it with the new key. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The silence in my home was different now. It wasn't empty, it wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. I looked around and realized that the penthouse was more than a symbol of success. It was a symbol of independence. It was proof that I had the power to protect what I built, and in that moment I knew the truth. They didn't lose the penthouse, they lost control. The next few days were quiet in a way that felt unnatural. No calls, no messages, no demands. It was as if the storm had passed and the world had returned to normal, except I knew better. The silence wasn't peace, it was the calm before a new wave. And then the wave came. It hit my office on a Wednesday afternoon. My assistant called me into the lobby. "Sir," she said quietly, "your parents are here." My heart skipped, but I didn't panic, I didn't feel fear. I felt the same cold clarity that had carried me through the last few weeks. "Let them in," I said. My assistant looked surprised. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I replied. "Let them in." When they arrived, my parents looked different, not older, not weaker, just desperate. The kind of desperation that comes when someone realizes the support system they relied on has vanished. My father's suit was rumpled. His face was pale. My mother's eyes were red, and she kept wiping them like she was trying to erase the evidence of her tears. My sister was with them too, standing behind them trying to appear composed but failing. Her eyes were red too, but not from tears, from anger. They sat in the lobby like people waiting for mercy. My assistant came to me, whispering, "They're here, what do you want me to do?" I looked at them calmly. "Let them in," I said again. The elevator doors opened and they walked toward my office like people entering a courtroom. I watched them approach, not with fear, but with the same kind of control I had shown since the night of the slap. I didn't rush to stand, I didn't rush to greet them, I simply waited. They stopped in front of my desk. My father stared at me, eyes wide. "You've done this," he said, voice trembling. "You've ruined everything." My mother began to speak, but my father cut her off. "Do you understand what you've done? Your sister is being sued, our cards are declined, we can't pay our bills." I leaned back in my chair, my voice was calm, almost bored. "I understand," I said, "and I understand why." My sister spoke up, her voice shaking. "You're making us suffer," I looked at her. "No," I said, "you made yourselves suffer." My father's face twisted in anger. "How dare you speak to us like that? We raised you." I stood up slowly, not in anger, but in finality. "You raised me," I said. "But you didn't raise me to be your bank account." My mother's eyes widened. "We did everything for you," she said, voice breaking. "You're our child." I shook my head. "Not anymore." My father stood up too, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You are being selfish," he shouted. "You are heartless." I walked around my desk, approaching them calmly. "You called me selfish," I said. "You called me heartless. You slapped me. You tried to take my home. You treated me like a tool." He stared at me, speechless. I continued, voice steady. "And now you're begging me to fix your problems. You want me to save you again." My sister's face turned pale. I stopped in front of them and looked each one of them in the eyes. I could see the shock, the anger, the disbelief, the realization that the person they had controlled was no longer available. I spoke clearly, like someone delivering a verdict. "I'm not your safety net anymore." My father's voice cracked. "You don't understand what you're doing." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You wanted me to give you my penthouse because you wanted to live a lie. You wanted me to pay for your image, your parties, your lifestyle. You wanted me to keep sacrificing myself while you lived comfortably." My mother's lips trembled. "We never asked you to suffer." You did, I said, every time you said family comes first and expected me to obey. My sister tried to interrupt. You don't know what we went through? I looked at her, surprised by the audacity. What did you go through? I asked. Your whole life was funded by my hard work. You went through luxury and fun, and you still have the nerve to act like you suffered? She opened her mouth, but no words came. My father stared at me, eyes burning with anger and humiliation. He turned to my mother and whispered, maybe we were wrong. My mother's face softened for a moment, but then she hardened again. You're not listening, she said. We're family. I smiled, small, cold. Family doesn't hurt family. My sister's voice broke. Please just give us one more chance. I shook my head. No, my father's shoulders dropped as if the weight of reality had finally crushed him. You're going to regret this, he said, almost whispering. I looked at him and replied, I already regret nothing. My assistant stood behind them, watching silently. I turned to her and said, please escort them out. She nodded. My parents stood there for a moment longer, as if waiting for the old version of me to return. Waiting for the son who would forgive, the brother who would sacrifice, the man who would obey. But that man was gone. My mother's eyes filled with tears again. She reached out like she wanted to touch my hand. I didn't move. She pulled her hand back, defeated. My father looked at me one last time, his expression a mixture of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. Then they turned and walked away. My sister tried to call my name, but I didn't answer. I didn't even watch them leave. When the door closed behind them, the silence in my office was different. It was not empty, it was clean. I sat back down, feeling something I had never felt before in their presence, relief. For years, I had lived inside their expectations. I had been their obedient child, their silent provider, their emotional shelter, but I had finally done the one thing they never expected. I had chosen myself. I had chosen freedom. And as I looked out of my office window at the city below, I realized something powerful. I wasn't cruel, I was finally free.